everybody can mute themselves, that would be great. And it is, let's see, it's 4:02 p.m. Pacific time. So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order.
At the meeting.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Oh, I need to do my screen sharing. 1 second. There we go. Let me just move this out of the way. Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Emily Podrotsky, and I'm the president of the E-Club of District 6600, Ohio Pathways. Tonight's meeting is a very special combined meeting with the Rotary Club of West Perth of District 9455 in Western Australia. It's directed by President Stephen Lee, and I believe District Governor John Bilson is with us. I took off my picture, so I can't actually see everybody right now. We also have many guests from District 6600, and I know I saw Deb Cheney, and she has quite a few people from the Waterville Rotary Club here as well. And our speaker tonight, of course, is Rotary International Director, Dr. Stephanie. Welcome, everybody, and thank you all so much for being here. This is the biggest meeting we've had of the Ohio Pathways Club, and it is one that we will not be forgetting. I'm going to introduce Dr. Urich in just a minute, but first I want to go over some general housekeeping rules and just go through introductions and our agenda for today. First and most important, I believe everybody has muted themselves by now. If you have trouble finding it, it should be, if you're on a PC, in the left-hand corner of your screen. And if you just hit that, you can mute or unmute yourself. Next, if you can please keep your video on so we can see everybody. It's a great way just to have fellowship during COVID especially. If we start to experience any glitching or bandwidth issues, then we can turn off the videos of individual people, but I want to give it a try having everybody on. Also, if you want, you can update your name that shows up on the bottom of your screen. If you right-click over your name on a PC, you can select rename, and you can add make sure your name is correct, and then also add your club. I think that would be really fun. And then if you can please hold your questions until the end of the presentation, we'll have some time for Q&A. Additionally, we are recording the meeting, and we'll post it on our website for members and friends who are unable to make it today. If you have any issues with that, for today's agenda, first I'm going to give us a quick overview of Ohio Pathways for our guests. And then I'll have President Stephen Lee of the Rotary Club of West Perth give a quick introduction for the club. Finally, I'll introduce Rotary International Director, Dr. Stephanie Urich, for our presentation. And then again, we'll have a quick question and answer session, and then we'll do a vote of thanks. Ohio Pathways was chartered in April of 2015, and it's the first and only E-Club of District 6600 in Western Ohio in the United States. We're a continuously evolving club with an international membership connected by our shared ties to District 6600. We have 39 members, including 4 past district governors, 10 past presidents, 6 former group study exchange participants, and 5 former youth exchange students. Our members live in Australia, Guatemala, Germany, Finland, Japan, Taiwan, and in 8 different states across the US. We're the home club for the Cooperative for Education, which provides educational resources and opportunities to Indigenous Mayan school children in Guatemala's Central and Western Highlands. We also support District 6600's signature project, MESA, which collects and sends medical and educational materials around the globe. On behalf of Ohio Pathways and District 6600, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to the Rotary Club of West Perth, President Stephen Lee, and of course to District Governor John Bilson. President Lee, could you take just a moment to introduce your club?
Yes, thank you very much, Emily, and I'll be very quick. We're delighted to have the opportunity to join you all this morning, and it's amazing what happens through these COVID times and life changes, and now we're all digitally aware and able to get in touch with other people outside. We're very fortunate that Rotary continues in a very similar way that it has for us for a long time. We still have our weekly meetings, face-to-face meetings. Our projects are ongoing. We have 32 members. West Perth is a club that was chartered in 1954 and has a great history. It almost, I feel almost embarrassed to say, but I joined the Rotary Club back in 1994 as quite a young member. And apart from our incoming president, Haley, I'm pretty much still the youngest member of the club. And I only miss out on that by 1 month. So certainly what Haley and I and the members are really focusing on now is rebuilding the club, getting a bit of the younger membership, and not really young. What we're trying to do is get something that we can build sustainably. So our focus at the moment is to be looking at just gradually bringing the average age level down and really connecting in with community and service opportunities throughout our district and internationally, as we have been involved with since we very first chartered. So thank you very much. We really enjoy participating, really pleased to be invited. I have a long history with Jim. I think it's really funny that you were hosted by my Rotary Club of Biggar for your group study exchange. So it really makes you understand that the world is a very, very small place. Thank you for having us this morning.
Definitely, and thank you so much. So I'll go ahead and introduce Dr. Urick. She currently serves on the Rotary International Board of Directors and is the chair of the executive committee. Since joining Rotary in 1991, she has fulfilled numerous roles, including foundation trustee, chair of the Rotary Strategic Planning and the Rotary Foundation Centennial Celebration Committee, member of the Atlanta Rotary International Convention Committee, international training leader, regional foundation coordinator, president's representative, district governor, district delegate, and she's also been a member of various committees on the club and district level. She's currently a member of the Rotary Club of McMurray, Pennsylvania. Her service to Rotary has included national immunization days in India and Nigeria, working with polio, building an elementary school in Vietnam, water filtration installation in the Dominican Republic, and mentoring new Rotarians in the Ukraine. After coordinating a district-wide Rotary Foundation matching grant to secure mammography equipment and biopsy unit for a hospital in Poland, the Rotary Club of Krakow acknowledged Dr. Urick as one of the agents helping the rebirth of Rotary in post-communist Poland. She continues this work in partnering clubs and districts in the United States with Rotary clubs in Kosovo and Albania for humanitarian and educational services. Outside of Rotary, Dr. Urick is a partner and chief operating officer at Doctors at Work LLC, a consulting and training company. She holds a doctorate in leadership studies from Indiana University of Pennsylvania and is on numerous community boards and committees and has been honored by organizations including Zonta International and the Sons of the American Revolution. Thank you so much, Dr. Urick, for being with us tonight. And I will stop my screen sharing and go ahead and put you on spotlight. Oops.
Okay, thank you, President Emily. You know, it's a pleasure to be with you all. So for all of you from the E-Club, hello, wherever you are in the world. And for my family of Rotary in Australia, good day. It's such a pleasure to be with you all. You know, Jim Hunt asked me to chat with you today about one of my favorite topics, and that's one of the priorities of our strategic plan. I can see you all now. All right, you're thinking, oh my God, what's wrong with him? Strategic planning. What, you know, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. It's 7 o'clock at night. Why are we talking about strategic planning? Well, actually, we're going to demystify one of the priorities of the strategic plan. You heard President Emily say that I've had the opportunity to chair the strategic planning committee for Rotary. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what brought Rotary to the point where we needed to develop this kind of plan, a little bit about the plan itself, but then focus in on one of the priorities. And that priority is, how do we enhance our engagement? So ultimately, what my message tonight is going to be is that we really need to move from perfect attendance to perfect engagement. So I have been in Rotary for over 30 years. And one of the things that I have noticed in the past 20 of those 30 years is that our membership has been stagnant. We've been at 1.2, 1.2, 1.2, 1.2 million for 20 years, and we haven't grown. Now, that doesn't mean that we haven't attracted members. We have. In fact, we have an alarming statistic. Last year in Rotary, we brought in more Rotarians than ever in our history. In any of our 116 years, we brought more people into Rotary last year than ever before. But unfortunately, we have another record. Last year, we lost more Rotarians than we ever have in our history. And that, folks, is just not a good trend to be in, to have that kind of track record. So about 6 years ago, Rotary looked very seriously at creating a joint committee. What that means is a joint committee works for both parts of our organization. You know, when we say Rotary, we know what that means when we say Rotary to the world. But actually internally, we have two separate organizations. We have Rotary International, which is the administrative part of our organization. That's the part that helps us work with clubs and districts and zones to strengthen what we do at the ground level. The other part of Rotary, the Rotary Foundation, is the arm of our organization that lets us do the magic around the world with our global grants and district grants and our Eradicate Polio program and our peace programs. But together, when we say Rotary, we mean both of those. So the organization decided that 6 years ago, we really needed to create a committee that was going to work for both and to really help move us into a thriving future. And that's how the Strategic Planning Committee was born, really. Half of the membership were appointed by the Rotary Board of Directors, and half were appointed by the Rotary Foundation, and then somebody was chosen to chair. And so one of our initial steps was obviously to do all the traditional things that you would think about in strategic planning. We did the SWOT analysis, and we did the looking at external threats and internal threats and opportunity. We did all of that, but we also did surveying, and we talked to more than 1 million people received a survey from Rotary. And we asked the questions about what are we doing right? What should we continue doing? What should we stop doing? And in addition to surveying, we did focus groups. Now, if any of you have participated in a focus group, you know that's a little bit different from a survey. In a survey, it's a very solitary activity. You sit in front of a computer or you fill out paper and pencil. But in a focus group, you're generally in a room or you could be on a Zoom screen. And as other people talk, you may hear things that trigger ideas that you may have forgotten or things that you wouldn't have said if you hadn't heard a comment from someone else. So we did that. And then we also did in-depth interviewing of our own staff. So we talked to our staff in Evanston, as well as all of our locations around the globe. After we had amassed all of that information, the job of the committee was to dig into that information and find the phrases that kept popping up. And we did that, put them together, and that became our vision statement, which you have heard. Maybe some of you have it memorized already. Together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Now, those last 3 words, to me, are the most important part of that statement, because it signals to me that this is the first time in the history of Rotary that the organization recognizes that when we help other people, we not only help those that we're serving, we're helping ourselves, we're changing ourselves. So that became a very well-received and important beacon, if you will, that provides guidance for all of the activities that we do to move us into a future. But our next step was to go back to that data and start to look for the strategies. We called them priorities, the things that would move us as an organization into this future and not just make us survive, but make us thrive as an organization. And if you've been on our website or if you've looked at the Rotary magazine, you will have seen these priorities mentioned over and over again. And there are 4 of them. One of them is about increasing our impact. And that's really the priority that helps us talk about measurement and impact. You know, when we talk about impact, there's input, output, outcome, and impact. We want to always make sure that the programs and the projects that we do are moving us to those impact statements. A perfect example there is our polio eradication program. From the get-go, we have been able to make strong impact statements there. We've said things from the beginning when we got started. We've said things like, when polio is finally eradicated, there will be 11 million children every year that won't get this crippling disease. There will be $85 million every year not spent on ancillary healthcare costs related to polio issues. So we've been able to make strong impact statements, and that's the kind of statement that attracted more partners to what we were doing. When we started in the mid-'80s, we had a handful of partners. Now we have more than a dozen. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Gavi Vaccine Alliance, the World Health Organization. Those impact statements were strong. And that's what we need to do even at our club levels. We need to make sure that we focus what we're doing, even locally, and make sure that we're able to make a statement about the impact we're having and tell that story. Then we have another priority. It talks about increasing our ability to adapt. Good Lord, we're in overdrive on this one. Think about it. A year ago, the way we did Rotary was absolutely ripped from us. We couldn't do it anymore. Yet Rotarians around the globe figured out how to connect. 60% of Rotary clubs worldwide are meeting virtually on some kind of platform. Another 18% are currently doing hybrid meetings. There's another small percentage that have figured out how to use the phone and doing phone trees and connecting. So people have figured out, Rotarians have figured out how to connect. We're doing what the world has been craving. And not only are we connecting, we have figured out how to serve. I hear constantly about clubs that are doing COVID relief and feeding hungry and doing all sorts of things. You know, Rotarians are people of action. They look and they see, what can we make better? And then they go and do it. But the 2 priorities that I want to really focus on tonight are 2 that help talk about how do we make our clubs simply irresistible? How do we move from perfect attendance to perfect engagement? And those 2 priorities are expanding our reach. So that means, you know, how do we create channels for people to come into Rotary? And what does that mean to create new channels? And then how do we enhance participant engagement? So let me start with that first one, expanding our reach. You know, you heard Emily say that I belong to a club in Pennsylvania in the United States. My club meets on Wednesdays at noon. My club is a legacy club. We've been around forever. We have 40 members. We're not going to go anywhere. I love my club. When I'm in town, if we meet hybrid, I go. If we're meeting online and I can make it, I tune in. I love my club. However, I got to thinking about the community in which we're located. And I'm thinking about all the people who are in this community who can't get away for a noon meeting on Wednesdays. I'm thinking about teachers. Maybe they have a teaching schedule. I'm thinking about other professionals, maybe healthcare, or people, you know, who have clients or customers. They can't get away. How many people are we missing in this community because we meet at noontime on Wednesdays? So this community would be ripe for something like half of you have done with the E-Club, or for something that our Council on Legislation created in 2016 when they opened the door with satellite clubs and passport clubs and corporate clubs and E-Clubs. So we really, really need to step back and think about, how do we expand our reach and make the magic of Rotary more attractive for other people to join us? And then the fourth priority is the one that centers around what I'm talking about tonight. And that's, how do we go from perfect attendance to perfect engagement? And why should we do that? Well, engagement, when we talk about participant engagement, the word itself, participant, doesn't simply mean members. That's certainly the core of it. Members are the core, but it means anybody that comes into the magic of Rotary. So that could be youth exchange students. It could be parents of students of the month. It could be prospective Rotarians. It could be the people who benefit by our service in our communities. So the word participant means all of those. And the idea behind creating engagement is to think about, how do we create a participant-centered approach? How do we get better at delivering value to the people who come in contact with us? Now think about why you joined Rotary. Everybody has a different reason. Some people come in because they want fellowship. All right, think about Paul Harris. 116 years ago, he founded Rotary, but he didn't start Rotary because he wanted to build a toilet block in Chicago, USA. He started Rotary because he was lonely. He was a young attorney. He had moved to Chicago. He didn't know a soul. So he found 3 other gentlemen and decided that they would meet weekly just to get to know one another. Fellowship. The service came later. There are others who look at Rotary and say, wow, that's a service. That's a service group. And they want to roll up their sleeves. They look at the good work that we do and how we change people's lives. They say, I want to do that too. So they come in for the service. Still, there's another group that looks at us and says, wow, look at all those people. They are business people. And, you know, that would be a great place to network. And it is. Rotary is the original networking organization. And still there are others who look and say the same thing. You know, there's a lot of experience here. I'm a young professional. By getting involved in this club, I could learn a lot. My goodness, look at all the mentors that I would have. So whatever the reason, we need to get better at finding out why people are coming into our clubs. You know, I've noticed that in prior Rotary information, there was a lot of talk about doing exit interviews. Well, that's stupid. That's the wrong time to talk to people. If they've made up their mind that they're going to leave a club, we're not going to get very useful information. We should be doing entrance interviews. We should be talking to people on their way into our clubs to find out what it is they're really interested in. I was at a Zoom meeting 3 weeks ago, and a club did something that was so interesting to me. They had a Rotarian of the Week. So this is a person who every week, they know ahead of time that they're going to be the Rotarian of the Week. Sometimes it's a new member, sometimes it's a legacy member, but they're interviewed by another member of the club. And the club member asks, you know, who brought you into Rotary? When did you join? What attracted you to this club? What's keeping you in this club? What's your profession? Tell us about your family. What one thing about you would we not be able to tell from your bio, and on and on and on. But what a perfect way for a club to get to know its members, and for those members to feel excited and interested in staying in that environment because they feel cared for. I don't know how many of you have ever heard current President Holger Knack do a presentation, but he always talks about how important it is for us to care about our members. Well, that was a prime example. And that's a way for clubs to think about delivering value, finding out what people are interested in, and then making sure that your activities, your programs, your projects, your speakers, all somehow relate to what people are looking for. You know, at the RI level, we listen to that. And one of the things that happened a couple of years ago, you may have heard about this, Rotary got together with Toastmasters International, and they developed a co-branded product. And that product was an online package that delivers Toastmasters training. So any Rotarian now, any Rotaractor now can get into our learning center and can avail themselves of that course and learn better public speaking skills, project management, leadership, but it's a co-branded product meant to help those people who are looking for leadership development, those young professionals who want to get better. So the idea is that we want to offer new opportunities. We want to listen to what people are interested in, and see how we can develop our club environment to help people, because they're looking for value. People are looking for value when they come to Rotary. Yes, they serve, and yes, they want fellowship, and yes, they're looking for mentorship, but they also want value. So that brings me to the point of, how are we doing in this past year? What lessons have we learned from the pandemic that help us when we talk about enhancing participant engagement? I mentioned that 12 months ago, you know, we were doing Rotary in a very different way. If you would have asked me 12 months ago, hey, Stephanie, set up a Zoom meeting and make sure there are breakout rooms, and I would have said, what in God's name are you talking about? But I've figured out how to do it. And we've all figured out how to meet in a virtual environment. But the virtual environment is great. You know, I'm frequently saying Zoom saved Rotary. It saved a lot of things. It saved a lot of, you know, companies and corporations, but it certainly helped us in terms of staying connected. But there are some things that we've learned from Zoom. Some of it has been very positive, and some of it not so positive. So on the positive sides, one of the things that's happened with going virtual is that I've heard many clubs say that they've been able to invite people who otherwise would not have come to a meeting. When you think about it, if you're meeting at noontime, or if you're meeting in the morning like you are in Perth, West Perth, you know, to get to a meeting, you might have to leave your house at half an hour before the meeting time, and then you get to the meeting, and then you're there for an hour, and then you drive a half an hour to work. That's 2 hours out of your workday. In my case, same thing for a lunchtime meeting. Have to leave work or leave my home at 11:30, drive, get to the meeting, it's an hour, then another half an hour drive. That's 2 hours. I don't care if you're the CEO. I don't care if you're a director. I don't care if you're the president of a company. That's a huge chunk of a day. But now that we've gone virtual, it's less time. You can jump onto a virtual platform in 60 seconds. And you can be in the meeting, and then after it's over, you're where you need to be. I've also heard from clubs that the fact that we've gone virtual means that club dues have come down. Yay, mine did. We were paying $240 US every quarter because that included our meals. Now we're down to 90 US dollars a quarter. Think about that. I pay $1 a day to belong to the greatest organization in the world. That's huge. And then we've also heard from people who have said, you know, I got invited to come to the meeting and I went virtually and I looked around and I saw who the people are and it didn't cost me anything. And, you know, I wasn't threatened. So for some people, it's an easy way to connect, especially young professionals who use technology so often. So there have been an awful lot of positives. Last weekend, on Saturday, I was in 5 different countries in one day. I was doing pets around the globe and I never left my office. I was in front of this machine all day, but I was in 5 different countries. Pre-pandemic, I could never have done that. Our president has said often that he's the only president in the history of Rotary who's been able to probably meet every Rotarian on the globe because he's constantly Zooming. So there are some advantages. It does make us connect. Look at us today. Look how international we are right now as we're chatting, or as I'm chatting with you, and ultimately you'll be chatting with me. But think about how international we are. The chances of this happening pre-pandemic were not very good. So there's a lot of positives to what we've been doing. On the flip side, there are some not so positive things. I'll be the first one to say, I can't wait for my club to go back to some meetings face to face. I want some human interaction. One of the things that happens in a virtual platform is that we have a lack of feedback, all right? So because everybody's on the screen at the same time, all right, you know, there are 2 kinds of feedback. There's implicit feedback, which is all the body language you get from people. And then there's explicit, which is like the verbal feedback you get. So when we're on a Zoom platform, we can't really get a lot of implicit feedback because most of the time you're seeing people from the shoulders up. And you're seeing 25 people at a time, unless you're on speaker view. And if I'm on speaker view, I can't see you. There's no eye contact, all right? When you're in a room with people, you have the option of receiving that implicit feedback because there's body language. There's, of course, the very first body language is a handshake or there's a hug. Then there's also, you know, the personal space when you're talking with someone. There's the nods. All sorts of things happen with implicit feedback that we can't really get on a virtual platform. There's also the issue of a lack of empathy. You know, when we're, as adults, when we're on a Zoom or other virtual platform, we have distractions galore. Right now, as I'm talking with you, my cat's walking underneath my feet here. Okay, so he's distracting me. All right, we have all kinds of distractions. We have children, we have spouses, we have doorbells ringing, we have all sorts of things. We're in an office environment, we've got other people walking by, lots of distractions. The average adult attention span when you're talking to people in a face-to-face setting is about 12 minutes, right? On Zoom, it's about 4 minutes until somebody starts to wander. So it's more difficult to have a meeting or to talk with people virtually because you have to work harder at engaging people. You have to do other things. That's why when I talk with clubs about doing virtual meetings, you know, people aren't tired of Zoom. They're tired of bad Zoom. So one of the ways that you can reduce people's negative feelings about Zoom is to think about the things that will create the empathy and create the emotion. One of those things is use, and you're going to do it in a bit, use the chat box or use the poll option or ask questions and say, how many people were in Rotary when Ian Risley was president? Raise your hand. So you keep people engaged by asking different questions, because it's a very different environment than when you're face to face with people. So the lack of emotion, the lack of empathy, the lack of control, the lack of commitment and connection, these are all things that are issues with Zoom that we can overcome, or with any platform, we can overcome those. But the basic idea is that we want to think about, how can we make sure that Rotarians find long-term value in our membership? So one of the questions that I'll ask you when we get to the chat, and we can have a two-way, is what would it take to make your club simply irresistible? What are the things that you could do at your club, whether you're the e-club or whether you're the in-person club or Zoom club in Perth? What are the things that you could do to make your club meeting irresistible? Because when we think about our organization, in order for us to move into that thriving future, two things have to happen. We have to attract more members, expand our reach, and we have to retain more members. You know as well as I do, because you're business people, that it always takes more effort, more time, more cost, more energy to get a new customer than it does to keep one you already have. Same true with our Rotary clubs. We need to really care for our members. We need to make sure that instead of them simply coming and sitting in a seat and saying, I was at the meeting, that they want to come. You know, younger people have an acronym that they use. They call it FOMO, fear of missing out. We need to create that in our Rotary Club meetings. We need to create FOMO. We want to make sure that people want to come to our meetings because they're so afraid they're going to miss something cool. So for every club, that's going to be different. So I really don't have a recipe for either of your clubs, because you know your club better than anybody does. You know, one of the things that I suggest to clubs when I give the full presentation about strategic planning is that you take your club, whether you're virtual or in person, and you divide the club into 4. If you're virtual, you can do it in breakout rooms, and you give each group one of the 4 priorities. And you ask that group to talk for 20 minutes, 25 minutes about, how do we take this priority and use it in our club? How do we translate it for what we're doing here in our club? How do we increase our impact? How do we expand our reach? How do we enhance participant engagement? How do we increase our ability to adapt? When you do that, 2 things happen that are really important. One, you get great information because it comes from your own club. And secondly, you get buy-in. You know, I mentioned when I started that, you know, as a committee, 6 years ago, the Strategic Planning Committee went out to the world. We reached out to the world with surveying and focus groups and interviewing. We didn't write a word of the action plan, the strategic plan. Instead, we asked the Rotary world, Rotarians, non-Rotarians, former Rotarians, Rotaractors, alumni. We asked other people for their input, and we captured all of that information. And from that information, that's how our action plan develops. So when you ask your own club members, you're going to give them a chance to have an opportunity to suggest things. So to have some buy-in. You know, there is a saying in the English language, people don't wash rental cars. They don't, because they don't own them. So when you give people an opportunity to weigh in and to provide some input, that's when they have some ownership. So again, the message tonight really is, I hope that you will start to think as Rotary leaders, and you're all leaders because Rotary leadership is situational. Sometimes you're a club officer, sometimes you're leading a project. So it's situational, but we're all leaders because we want our communities to understand what Rotary magic is, and we want to be more appealing. We want to get more people in our clubs. We want to keep more people in our clubs. So as Rotary leaders, what's going to make your club simply irresistible? What's going to make membership in your club go from perfect attendance to perfect engagement? So thanks for listening to me. I'm going to stop. I'll ask Emily or somebody if we'll go back to the gallery view, and I'll open it up for any questions you may have. If you have any, put them in the chat. Somebody will be monitoring that. Or if you have some great ideas about what would make a club irresistible, I'd love to hear them.
Great, thank you so much, Stephanie. And yes, if anybody has any questions, we'll moderate them. If you do, go ahead. There should be a raise hand option in your reactions, which is on the bottom toolbar of your screen, or you can always just type in the chat box. Just let us know and we can call on you to unmute yourself.
I love it when I do such a good job. There are no questions.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
As we enter into this COVID experience that we're going through, at least here in Ohio, we're starting to have the beginning of mass vaccination clinics.
Yep.
I see Rotary as being a huge part of that in terms of helping, not giving the vaccine, because obviously we aren't trained to do that, but to facilitate the logistics of getting it done and having our vests on that say who we are.
Yes.
We're starting to plan that in our district. And it's like, this is going to go on for at least the next 4 or 5 months. Where do you see our position around the world? This is going to happen everywhere. How are we going to react?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's already happening in some parts. You know, my zones are in the southeastern part of the United States, and already in places in South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, there are Rotary clubs who are volunteering at vaccination sites to do, just as you said, simple logistic things, you know, checking people in, being traffic monitors, you know, doing that kind of thing to help with the deployment of the vaccine. And you're absolutely right. Wearing Rotary gear is fabulous. You know what? Think about it. For 100 years, we talk to ourselves. What good is that going to do if we talk? We know what Rotary is. That's why we're in Rotary, okay? We need to be public facing. We need to tell other people the Rotary story. So I absolutely agree with you that, you know, if you have an opportunity with your club to be safe, to do things according to local government regulations and to follow with whatever regulations are in place, absolutely get involved and be there. Do you know that in countries around the world where we're still fighting polio, we have vaccinators who, instead of, at the beginning of the pandemic, the vaccine distribution for polio shut down. So but the vaccinators didn't shut down. They did their best to get information out to people about COVID. They did their best to get masks to people for COVID protection. So, you know, Rotary has been a part of this COVID response since the very beginning. And you're absolutely right. As things ramp up and more things happen, that we get, you know, more clinics going, we need to be at the forefront and we need to be visible. We need to be public facing. Thanks for the idea.
I have a question, Stephanie. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. It's great to be all the way over here in Perth in Western Australia and listening to you. So one of the joys and wonders of technology.
Absolutely.
You mentioned in your opening remarks that really alarming statistic around that we've got the most members in the past 12 months and we've lost the most as well. I just wondered, is there anything that you can sort of add to that in terms of the reasons why we're losing our members? I mean, your premise is obviously engagement, which I'm totally on board with and totally agree with. But are there other reasons that that's occurring? And one in particular that strikes me is also generational change. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that and how we might be able to attract some of our younger members.
That's not an easy answer, actually, because I think there are probably multiple reasons. There is some research that's been done by Rotary that suggests that to a certain point, COVID has had some responsibility for a decline in membership. However, there is a data genius, I don't know what else to call him, in zones 33 and 34, my zones, who has done similar research that suggests it's complacency that results in our lack of membership. There are some parts of the world where it's a regional issue, all right? You know, I don't know how many of you have been to Rotary events in India, for instance. I went to a district conference a couple of decades ago already. Good Lord, there were 3,000 people at the district conference. In my own country, you know, we're lucky if we get 200 people at a conference. So I think there are so many different reasons. Some of it is generational. Some of it is geography and culture based. There are a lot of researchers who study the differences in the generations, and you're right, they react differently to things. So there's some value in us paying attention to what happens. You know, I remember when I was younger, I'm going to date myself now, I used to go out to disco dances, and I used to wear heels that were this high. And my father would grab me on my arm and he'd say, "Where in the world are you going in those shoes? You're going to trip, you're going to fall, you're going to break your neck." And I'd say, "Dad, we all know how to walk in them. We all know how to dance in them. It's how we do things." Well, you know what? Every generation figures out how to do things. Several years ago, I invited a young professional to my Rotary Club. And so he came and he sat next to me. And as the meeting started, you'll appreciate this, Stephen and Emily, the president jumped up, rang the bell. We did the pledge. We said the four-way test. We sat down. And then the young man leaned over to me and he said, "Oh my God, that was Pavlovian." And he's right. But it's what we do, and it's not going to go away because my club is built on tradition. But if that young man gets involved in Rotary, which I hope he has, they're going to do things the way that makes sense for them. And so I love Rotary just like you do. Look at all of us. Look at all of us on this call, okay? There are so many other things we could be doing on a Tuesday morning or a Monday evening, but we're here talking Rotary because we love Rotary. But I know that I'm not going to be here forever. And I want to make sure that when I'm not, there's somebody behind me, somebody in line who's going to pick up and do the magic of Rotary. So I have to, and I want to be willing to listen to how people younger than me, different from me, want to do Rotary because they want to do it their way. So I think there's value in listening to all the intergenerational research that's out there. There's value to listening to regionalism and how that factors into Rotary. All of that plays a part in how we grow our organization. What else can I answer? It doesn't have to be about the presentation. You've got a director on the line, so fair game.
Yeah, go ahead, Howard.
Hi, I have a question, Stephanie.
Yes.
This is Howard Lobb. I'm in Guatemala. And I put this question out to anybody too. It's about hybrid meetings. I think that's an exciting thing if we could pull it off technologically to move forward with. One club here in Guatemala was doing that before the pandemic. I'm just wondering if you, Stephanie, or if anyone else has seen anyone really pull it off successfully. I think it probably depends on kind of a magic playbook of technology. I'm even thinking of a camera that they use in classrooms called a swivel camera, and the camera tracks whoever the speaker is. But is there some way, to have, because in places where COVID allows it, people will want to get back to meeting in person, but yet there will be people for distance or all the reasons you mentioned can't, and they're so used to doing Zoom meetings. So is there a way to do hybrid meetings successfully, or does it just mean super great internet and 2 or 3 cameras and great microphones and all that? Has anyone seen anything work well?
Yeah, there is a great way to do that. And I just put my email in the chat. So if you want to send me a message,
Okay.
there's a club in the United States, in the state of California, that put out a video, and it's a hybrid, and it would be a great club meeting. It's a video you could show as a club meeting. It shows how to put on a hybrid meeting. And what it is a meeting where they talk about the history of Rotary's involvement in polio, but they also talk about what you need to do with technology if you want to have a splendid hybrid meeting. You'll also find some things popping up in our learning center on how to have a hybrid meeting. Because you know what, even though the world is going to open up and vaccines are going to be everywhere and we're not going to have the threat of getting COVID, there are lessons that we're learning from this pandemic. I don't think we'll ever see technology go away. You'll see more and more training happening through virtual platforms, but we'll still have, our events where we meet in person. So I think our Rotary, our magic of Rotary is going to become hybrid. So yes, the answer to your question is yes. So if you want to send me a private message on email, I'll be sure to send you that link for the La Morinda Rotary Club of California program.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
David, you can go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much for being here and for an excellent presentation. And as you talk about the here and now, makes me think of what the folks who think way out ahead are thinking about Rotary and other similar kinds of organizations, say in 10 years, 25 years, will there be Rotary? Will it be similar to what it is now? Have great thinkers begun to put any of this to paper?
Well, all of us are thinking about, as I mentioned, will Rotary be here? I want it to be here. I don't want it to go away. I've spent 31 years of my life making the world a better place. I want other people to keep doing that after I'm gone. So yes, people are thinking about the future. But as I mentioned also, for too long, we were afraid to talk about what we do. We need to be humble braggarts, if there's such a phrase. We need to really, in a public facing way, tell the world what it is that we do in Rotary. Think about your own district conference, okay? Or your own club, events that you have in your districts. Do you invite people from the outside? Is it open to anybody? In a virtual world, it is. Recently in November, this past November, as I was planning my Zone Institute, I made it open to the world. If I had done it in person in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where we were going to plan to have it, I would have had maybe 400 or 500 Rotarians. Because I put it online and it was virtual, we had 10,000 people take a look at that institute. All right, so we need to get better at sharing our message, David, and making sure that people understand what Rotary is. We still have a stigma that we're fighting. It's getting better, but there's still a stigma that there are some people, if you say Rotary, they say, oh, isn't that old guys club? They have lunch together. No, that's not what we are. And we need to tell that story. We need to tell that story more often. So we just need to get a little better about it. And why also, before the meeting started, I talked to some of you about the fact that we have some built-in people who we let go and we shouldn't. Our young people who have gone through youth exchange, our Rotaractors, our Interactors, our Rilarians, we need to get better at capturing those people and and helping guide them into Rotary clubs. They get us. They know all about us. And so that's a market that we have never really been good at keeping track of, and we need to figure out how to do that.
I agree with you. I have 45 years in Rotary in different locations, and I would sure like to see it maintain, sustain, and grow. So
Absolutely.
you're right on. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Great. Matt Peabody, did you have a question you wanted to ask? Oh, I see you pushing buttons.
Yeah,
There
I
we
put
go.
it in the chat, and it was actually the first question that came up.
Okay.
Which, why did we have record numbers leaving? So,
Okay.
for asking.
Great. Anybody else?
I had a suggestion, a thought about getting more engagement.
Yes.
With especially with the pandemic and so many other very small nonprofits struggling. I just wonder, if we couldn't use Rotary to help just adopt some of those smaller local nonprofits and just help them with our sheer platform as a way for engagement, and not to take away from the Rotary efforts, but just another way to kind of keep it local and to spread our name and the awareness of what we do, but just to find a way to plug into some of the smaller local nonprofits that are struggling, because a lot of them are having to collaborate with other nonprofits just as pet projects. I just thought, a way to get people excited about a certain cause, help a local organization, and then spread the word.
I think you answered your own question or your suggestion. Yeah, absolutely. And again, every Rotary Club understands its community better than anybody else. There's nobody at the international level that can come to your club and say, do this, do that, do this, do that, and you're going to be, you can't do, it doesn't work that way. We as Rotarians are in our communities, and we understand, we can look around and we can see what needs to be made better, who needs some help, and how do we do that. So you're absolutely right. If there are places in your community that need some help, your Rotary Club will figure out how to do that correctly.
Okay.
Stephanie, I have a quick question. You have Rotary Works as a hashtag on your background, and I saw just a little bit of something online about what that was about. I was wondering if you could share it.
Yes. Well, as you know, the pandemic has changed life for a lot of people. And as I mentioned, I'm in the southeastern part of the United States. We go from Pennsylvania all the way down to the state of Florida and over to the islands, and even have 3 countries in South America. Many people in my zones have lost their job. We have a lot of the airline industry in my area. We have hospitality, we have tourism. We have a lot of people who've lost their jobs. We have a lot of Rotaract clubs, and we have a lot of Rotaractors who are graduating from university and facing the absolute worst job market ever. We have a lot of people who have been downsized. We have families who are struggling, their hours have been cut. So as a vocational service initiative, we instituted a program called Rotary Works, and it has a number of different components. Some are open to anybody in the world, and some are open only to Rotarians in zones 33 and 34. So some of the things open to everybody in the world. We have a career strategies seminar series. It's done on Zoom. We have 1 or 2 sessions every month. Now our website is very simple. It's rotary.works. No .com, no .org, none of that stuff, just rotary.works. And if you go to that website, you can see the sessions that are coming up and also the sessions that have happened, and they're recorded and you can watch them. They deal with all kinds of job and career development strategies. They're presented by professionals in our zones who work in career development, human resources, consulting, coaching. So those are open to anybody. We also have a resource library on our website for people who are looking for easy information quickly about how do you do a resume in a pandemic, or how do you interview for a job? So those things are available for anybody. The two parts of the program that are open only to Rotarians in our zones, we have a coaching program, again, a vocational service opportunity. Any Rotarian can volunteer to be a mentor, a coach. Any Rotarian or Rotaractor can ask for a coach, and they get paired up. And then there's a relationship that can help both the person being mentored as well as the person doing the mentoring. We also have a one-time financial grant. So people who have experienced stress because of a career transition can ask for and apply for a one-time $500 US grant. It's not going to pay somebody's mortgage, but it can help put food on the table. It can pay for Rotary dues. It can provide enough money to buy the right kind of attire to wear for a Zoom interview, whatever. So I would encourage you, if you know of anybody who is facing a career transition or wants to look for a new job, they can visit Rotary.works, and they're able to look at those career strategy seminars. They can register, they can do them live as a guest, or they can watch the things that have been recorded. So that's what that's about. That is not a Rotary International program. That is a Rotary Zone 33 and 34 program. Thanks, Emily.
Of course, thank you. That sounds amazing. And I just put a link to the site right in the chat if anybody wants to take a look at that. I know I definitely will be looking into that. I've been furloughed and am contemplating a career change myself. So
okay, all right, good luck.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Does anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up?
Well, I want to thank you all so much for letting me join you this evening and this morning. It's been fun. Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. And I can't wait to visit Australia again. And for my friends who are around the globe, you're all in interesting places. So I hope sometime in the future we get to see each other face to face. And thank you, Jim Hump, for the invitation.
You're more than welcome, and we're just totally pleased to have you. I'd ask everyone to unmute and let's show our appreciation for Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great seeing everybody.
Much appreciated. Great talk.
Thank you.
No, like, as Jim has said, we really, really appreciate you being here with us, Stephanie, and also President Lee and District Governor John had to pop out. But thank you to the Rotary Club of West Perth for being with us. And thank you, Jim, for coordinating everything. You do an amazing job with your time and energy and your passion into Rotary, and we all really appreciate it. Before everybody signs off, just a quick plug for our next meeting. The Pathways Club will be meeting back at our regular time at 8 o'clock Eastern on Monday, April 12th. Our very own David Daughtry and past district governor will be talking about Mesa. So that should be great. Everybody is welcome to attend. West Perth, if you want to join in again. Waterville, you're more than welcome to. And any other guests are always more than welcome. And with that, unless anybody else has any last minute burning questions, I don't see any. I don't think I missed any in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and officially adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody. If people want to stick around for a little bit longer and chat, you're more than welcome to. Bye.
Thanks, Emily.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you, guys.